For now, it is the former president who is the far-out frontrunner for his party's presidential nomination. And while he is going through the bottomlands in terms of his legal troubles in civil court, in criminal court, in state court, potentially soon in federal court, I mean, whether or not that makes the far-right Republican base voters like him even more, him being the standard bearer again for his party, it just isn't good news for his party. I mean, yes, Donald Trump was elected in 2016 to the White House. Yay for Republicans. But then in the next election after that, in 2018, Republicans lost more than 40 seats in the House. And the next election after that, their Republican president, Donald Trump, became a one-term president. He lost the White House while their party also lost the Senate. Then in the next election after that, a midterm election after the election of a new Democratic president. Historically, that means the Republicans should have cleaned up. This was a midterm election where Republicans were predicting they'd picked up 40, 50, maybe even 60 or 70 seats in the House. Republicans instead in 2018 ended up with a single-digit win in the House. What happened to the red wave? They were so flummoxed by how poorly they did in 2018 that when they finally squeaked over the line to be able to pick a Republican speaker, it took them 15 ballots and 5 days to do it. It was the first time in a century it had taken more than one ballot, and it took them 15. So 2016, yeah, okay, but then 2018, no. 2020, no. 2022, no. Even this year, 2023, in an off year, the elections last week, Democrats won contested special elections in swing states like New Hampshire and Pennsylvania. They won big mayor's races away from the Republicans in previously reliably red places like Jacksonville, Florida, and Colorado Springs, Colorado. In Jacksonville, it was a Democrat who won the mayor's race. In Colorado Springs, it was an independent, but that was the first time ever somebody who is not a Republican has won the mayor's race in Colorado Springs. I mean, just looking at how Republicans have done in elections in the era of Donald Trump, having Donald Trump as their standard bearer of their party has been bad for them. It has not been good for them as a party. And, you know, maybe it's not fair to only judge them by what their standard bearer has been able to achieve politically. Of course, there's lots of states that are under Republican control. Aside from Donald Trump, how's it going politically in terms of the national political image for the Republican Party when you look at what's going on in states run by Republicans? Well, they haven't exactly been cleaning up on big political winning issues, just in the current news cycle. I mean, this was the headline in the Wall Street Journal today. Arkansas seeks to end school desegregation settlements. Arkansas? School desegregation? Why does that ring a bell? I mean, literally, the state of the Little Rock Nine, the state where federal troops had to be used to desegregate the schools by force, years after the Brown versus Board of Education ruling that said segregation was illegal. That state, under Republican leadership from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, now that state is deciding that they're going to get rid of desegregation orders for all their schools. Because surely that's never been a problem in Arkansas. This comes hot on the heels of Arkansas blazing a trail in Republican governance against child labor laws as well. Because, yes, who among us in America has not laid awake at night worrying that the big problems we need bold leadership to address in this country are the fact that schools can't be segregated anymore, and, ooh, boy, do I hate that there are child labor laws. Don't worry, Republicans are in control in Arkansas, and they're on both those big problems. In Indiana, under Republican governance, their new law there on books in schools threatens school librarians with felony convictions. Felonies. Threatens to put librarians in prison if they don't abide by Republicans' new book bans. The Indianapolis Star recently reported on how Captain America comic books were among the books being banned in Indiana schools now for being somehow offensive to Republicans. Apparently, after that ended up in the paper, they decided that Captain America had been removed in error and they needed to put him back. But that's the kind of level of political sophistication Republicans are playing with in Indiana right now. In Florida this weekend, the NAACP had to issue a travel advisory for African Americans, for black travelers, advising that recent changes in Florida law under that state's Republican governor and Republican legislature mean that black travelers need to, quote, beware that, quote, your life is not valued in the state of Florida, essentially saying that if you are a person of color, traveling to Florida should be consented to only at your own risk, because that state is against you. I mean, whatever your politics are, whether you agree with what these Republicans and Republican governors and Republican legislatures are doing in the states, you still can see, right, that this isn't exactly a thrilling national platform on which Republican candidates are going to be eager to run for the White House next year, right? Like jailing librarians, banning abortion, banning books, undoing desegregation orders for schools, getting rid of child labor laws, right? I mean, regardless of who their standard bearer is going to be, it's either going to be Donald Trump or it's going to be somebody else who has this record of current models in Republican governance to run on. And regardless of, you know, who their standard bearer is going to be, whether it's going to be Trump or not, regardless of the unpopularity and extremity of how they are governing in the states they control, I mean, the one hope they have for taking back the White House next year, for taking back control of the executive branch, for taking the presidency in 2024, the one thing that is in their control, the one thing they can control about the country as a whole, the political climate for the country, the one thing they can do single-handedly is control the economy. They can control that. That is in their hands. Democratic President Joe Biden is, of course, running for re-election. And you know, he's running for re-election, having brought the U.S. unemployment rate down from 6.3% when he was sworn in to 3.4% today. Unemployment rate is lower right now than what we had in the 90s, than what we had in the 80s, than what we had in the 70s. The last time unemployment this low was 1969. He's created millions and millions and millions of new jobs in his one term as president thus far. And that, of course, is terrible for Republicans' political prospects. But they can't control anything about Donald Trump, apparently. They apparently can't restrain themselves when it comes to governing in a way that might be nationally attractive to swing voters. But they really can control the health of the economy with this debt ceiling thing. In this debt ceiling fight, that is within their control. And they know it. If they refuse to raise the debt ceiling, the White House Council of Economic Advisors has just released a report saying the consequences of that will be that millions of Americans will lose their jobs. More than 8 million Americans will lose their jobs. The economy will contract radically. The stock market would fall by nearly half, by 45%. If the default is protracted, a simulation the White House Council of Economic Advisors have done shows, quote, an immediate sharp recession on the order of the Great Recession in 2008 and an unemployment increasing by 5 percentage points. So we'd go from 3-point-something% unemployment now to 8-point-something% unemployment instantly, right? That would be terrible for any president running for re-election in those circumstances. And that is absolutely within Republicans' control if they want to unleash that on the country. They can use this debt ceiling fight to do that to the country if they want to do it to reap the political rewards in the fight for the White House next year.